Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 452nd episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today, we're getting into old school selling. I love talking to just pure, traditional, kneecap to kneecap, belly button to belly button salesman. That's what Dan is. I was fortunate enough he found me. I was able to move up his interview because, as I have mentioned the last several, I'm always, a few weeks, maybe even a month ahead of time with the interviews, but I will do the intro and outro just before it goes live. So in case there's any updates, news, releases, whatever. But I am doing several of these ahead of time because I'm on the road for 25 days in June. So Dan was gracious enough to adjust his schedule, had him on early, and we had a 43-minute conversation. And it was cool. I like his approach. It's a little bit counterintuitive, which is the way I've done things. You got to, I've always said, and we talk about this, our job in sales, the real goal is to ask questions that they can't answer. Because if the prospect has all the answers, why do they need you? And you prove your expertise by the questions that you ask. And so that's what we get into. Dan is you'll hear in the interview, he's just calm, he's methodical. He's not some, excitable, F-bomb dropping, used car salesman, high pressure. He's very laid back, calm, methodical, professional. And that's the way I like things to be. And you can be that way. My very first paid sales training client was an architect that was leaving a firm to go out on his own. And because he was very analytical, he did well. Because selling really is very prescriptive. And so when you hear Dan, I hope it clicks with you. I hope it resonates with you that can be your style as well. Okay, if that's your style, you can succeed in sales, and maybe even better. I know that's been my style. I amp things up because I'm having fun on the interview and stuff. But when I'm dealing with clients, prospects, I'm pretty mellow. So, except when I'm doing jiu-jitsu. And the way I get after people is I eat better. I've been eating better. Check out what I'm eating. thesaleswhisperer.com/fitness. Get you some. And let me know what you're getting and how it's working and what kind of results you have. All right? So now, after that, though, let's jump in and improve your sales results with Dan. Dan Lappin, CEO and president of Lappin 180, international speaker, member of Forbes Coaches Council, and host of the Breaking Sales Podcast. Man, welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
Good.
Did you have to think about that?
Oh, I missed what you said. You had a different tone and cadence in your voice.
I do that to throw people off, man.
And it worked. You threw me off within 1 minute.
All right, let's start all over again. Hell no, I keep all my stuff. I keep it lean and mean. I just hit record and publish. So, well, hey, man, yeah, thanks for coming on. And, I want to talk about all that. Obviously, let's just jump right into the Breaking Sales Podcast. It's got to be Breaking Bad, right? Is there a reference there?
A little bit of a reference, even though I will admit I've never really watched Breaking Bad.
Oh, my gosh. This show is over. We're ending this episode. Goodness. Are you even American? What is... Oh. All right. I'll grant you one, okay? But don't make that happen again. I did watch that. I don't know. I got a bunch of kids here, man. My Netflix and my Bose headset on my iPad. That's my escape. And it was kind of a crazy show. So what was the concept around that, though? Is it like breaking sales records or just kind of a play on words?
Well, what we teach is in some ways counterintuitive and the opposite of traditional sales. So a lot of the things that salespeople do is counterintuitive to how another human being makes a decision for change. So a lot of psychology goes into a human being deciding on change. A lot of that psychology has to do with, not feeling like someone's trying to influence you to do something. Because the more we feel like someone's trying to influence to do something, the more we kind of push back or dig our heels in the sand. Breaking sales is about the techniques to help somebody truly become objective as they debate change. And so that's a quick, easy way of describing it. Sometimes it's doing the opposite, hence the name Lappin 180. A lot of times it's doing the opposite of sales.
Right. So, yeah, because I saw on your site, so you had some interesting verbiage here. Let me scroll down. Oh, no, I'm on your, where am I? I'm on your homepage. You're talking about struggle. Where the heck is it? You were talking about how anything changes comes about through struggle. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Oh, where is it? Now I'm missing it on your site, but it was good. Okay, it's way down the bottom. I'm sorry. So struggle is key to performing at the highest level. It includes all the conflict, tension, and doubt we innately try to avoid. So elaborate on that. I mean, is sales hard? Should I be struggling? Is it a grind? Or I got to imagine you're coming at it from a different approach, huh?
Well, it's like an athlete too. I mean, in sales, a lot of sales professionals, Wes, really work hard to get those appointments. You know that. And they really work hard to prepare for the meetings. And then the challenge is, though, when they go into these meetings, who the decision maker is, they're attached to an outcome. Most salespeople are like, okay, I hope I get a second meeting. I hope this decision maker likes me. I hope they invite me back and maybe I can review some data, or I hope I get the business. There's always an outcome tied to it. And as human nature is, like with an athlete is learned at the highest level, let the outcome go. You know, if you have a golfer who's on one of the tee boxes and they're coming off a double bogey and they're on the next tee box and they got water up the right and they got woods up the left, the second that golfer starts worrying about their overall score and focusing too much on where they got to place this ball, they lose focus on the execution of their swing. So when they see the water on the right, their last mental thought is, don't hit it to the right. Sure enough, when they swing the club, what happens more often than not? They're going to push or slice the ball to the right. Sales is very similar in a sense that once you start focusing on the outcome, it changes the execution of your skill because you start listening for things that you want to hear that maybe help you find the prospect's pain, or maybe it helps you, get that second meeting, or you only ask questions that are focused on what you want. And you're not truly asking questions that may serve helping that prospect truly debate change. So when we talk about the Breaking Sales, the podcast, we talk about struggle, we cause our own struggle, when we start focusing too much on what we want, and it takes us completely out of our rhythm, and it almost handicaps us from executing our skill. That's what we mean by when we say struggle.
Yeah, I'm always telling people, it's like the only thing we can control is our effort, right? I can't force you to buy from me, but I can, last night I could make myself go to bed early and skip dessert so I sleep better. So then it's easier to wake up in the morning. It's easier to prepare for the day. It's easier to do a good interview, make good calls, whatever. And then the rest is going to have to take care of itself, right?
Right. I mean, we've done studies and we've worked with a few folks on this whole idea of generating your peak performance. So, the military does this. They have all these programs right now where how do you bring out peak performance? There's books out there written by, Stephen Kotler on Rise of Superman and other things where it's about peak performance. But to your point, getting sleep, eating right, being sharp in the morning, exercising, meditating, those are all key contributors now to what we see top performers in sales doing. Those are the new routines of top performers. They take meditation serious. They take their sleep serious. They take eating and exercising very serious.
Yep, the hip bone's connected to the leg bone, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So in all of this, are you doing one-on-one coaching? Is this group coaching? Like, where have you found the sweet spot?
So we set up our days. Everything's ongoing. We as human beings, or adults, I should say, as adults, we learn quite well. The challenge for us as adults is doing things different because, we get attached to our past experiences. We get attached to what we've created, our successes. We get attached to our failures because they're ours. It's our blood, sweat, and tears. So sometimes it's really hard for us to try new things, even though intellectually we get it. So our programs are set up to help people through that. So on one given day, there'll be in the morning, there'll be a 1 to 2 hour general session about a particular topic, which one of our coaches will deliver the content. Then that day gets broken up into what we call small groups. So you might have a small group of 6 or 8 people who are high performers as group one, small group of middle performers, and small group of maybe newbies, inexperienced individuals. And we separate them so that we can curtail the language and the delivery to where that person might be in their career. Those small groups are made so that we can dive deep into the content and do actual role plays, do what we call deal dissections or conversation dissections. That's the key part here, is the conversation dissection. Because, in sales, it's all about the conversation. If you have a good conversation and you're able to change that prospect's experience, you're probably going to have a positive result. And so we really focus on that. And then what we do at the end of the day is there'll be select one-on-ones for those who need a little extra attention, a little extra coaching. So that's how we typically structure our training programs.
So what makes up a good conversation? Is it the old adage, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them proportionately? Should I be asking more questions? Should I be offering more information? What's the balance?
It's the mindset. I'll explain that. The best way to explain it is like this, and this might take me a few minutes here, Wes, but let's pretend your listeners are going to get a referral from someone they respect. All right. And that person says, hey, meet with Dan Lappin. He's a high performance coach. Most of your listeners at that moment in time, Wes, are going to feel like, okay, a little bit of obligation. This person I respected has referred this guy to me. They want me to meet them for a cup of coffee. That's fine. I'll do it. So imagine everybody has to meet me for a cup of coffee, and you pick a coffee shop off near where you live, and I sit down. Most people are going to feel at this point in time a little bit cautious because they'd be wondering, okay, what's Dan all about? How long is this going to take? Is he going to try to sell me? If I'm honest with my answers, is he going to try to use my answers against me? Is he going to judge and critique me? People are very guarded in general when we first meet other people. Human nature is we're always trying to figure out, is an interaction going to harm us or help us? Let's say that conversation continues, Wes, and I start asking questions. And I'm asking your listeners questions about their performance, how they do, how are they doing against their goals, where can they improve, what their strengths are. The mindset piece kicks in where the second your listeners feel like that I am asking questions based on something I want to hear, the second they feel like I'm asking questions to try to get them somewhere, your listeners are probably going to shut down. And what that means is they're going to become defensive. They're going to give, half-baked answers, surface level answers. I may be asking great questions, but my intent of the question is off. And that's what people are reading, and that's what people would sense from me. So if I'm trying to find a listener's pain, most of your listeners are smart enough where they're going to be going, okay, Dan's trying to find my pain. They're going to kind of back off, become a little closed. Conversation really goes nowhere. I spend my time then filling in the space with, here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's how great we are. Your listener sits back and says and shakes their head up and down, that's interesting, that's compelling, oh, that's kind of cool. No, I really appreciate the time to meet with you. Yeah, let's meet again, do this some other time. The key to a good conversation is your mindset. So what we teach is most salespeople go in with, how do I get this person to want to do business with me? How do I get this person to like me? Or how do I get this person to want or see my value? That means that salesperson wants and needs something, okay, from the prospect. Just like in that coffee shop example now, that prospect senses it. Just like in the coffee example, that prospect will shut down too, like everybody else. So where happens to the conversation? It really doesn't go anywhere. It stays in these continued sales conversation patterns. And if you want to break out of that pattern and really start to learn more from your prospect, you have to change your mindset. So instead of going in with a, how do I get them to like me or buy from me mindset or see my value mindset, it's how do I go in and help and determine how and if I can help this person. It's a very different mindset. So if I'm talking to you, Wes, and I'm trying to convince you of something that serves me, it's going to have a direct correlation of what I listen for and what I ask. But if I go into a conversation with you, Wes, and I'm like, all right, how and if can I help Wes? All my listening serves you. All of my questions serves you. But I got to add one more mindset to it, even though there's a couple of them. I think your listeners would appreciate this mindset. Not only do I have to have this mindset of how and if I can help this person and are they ready for my help, I have to have a what we call detached mindset. Because if I get overly attached to specific answers, I'm only going to continue the conversation in the direction of those answers, especially if they're good answers. If I get attached to bad answers where I didn't want to hear that answer, I'm going to potentially avoid any further conversation direction in that direction. So detachment is keeping us in the game so that no matter whatever the prospect says, good or bad, we don't assign a value to it. So it's like you hear in these pro athletes or these extreme sports individuals, right? You got the guy who can ride the 80-foot wave, crazy, right? Gets on top of the wave, lets go of the tow line, all right? Straight down is 80 feet. He's barreling on top of it. At that moment in time, he cannot be thinking about an outcome, good or bad. He has to let go of all expectations to be in the moment so that he can perform his skills at the highest level in the moment. It's the same in sales. Once people become attached to an answer, attached to an outcome, it changes what they ask next. It changes what they do. All right. Instead of staying in the game and truly listening and asking questions that serve that prospect's ability to try to debate change. Now, I know I just threw a lot out there, but that's a conversation. That's a true advisor conversation versus a sales conversation, which is, typically what questions do I ask so I can help this person determine and see my value?
Everything you said, I agree with. How does a new, inexperienced salesperson survive, though, until they get to that point? Because it takes a while. I'm totally thinking of jiu-jitsu on all of this, right? Because I'm addicted. And I still 3.5 years going 5 and 6 days a week. Like I still feel like I barely know anything. And I feel like I have very few attacks, but I feel like I have good reflexes now. And especially if it's a peer, if it's somebody at my level, I'm not afraid. I'm like, I can handle what they throw at me. Obviously the higher belts, I get beat up, but, I have a peer and I do this a lot. I'll just let them attack. And because I've learned, because in the beginning you learn, if you're smart, you learn it's all about defense. Just try to live for an extra 30 seconds. And then you can live for a minute. And then maybe you live the entire 6 minutes. And now you're not afraid of dying. And then you can start to kind of do some attacks because then you're not afraid. Oh, if I try this and I miss, yeah, I'll be in a bad spot, but I can get out of that bad spot. Right. And so, but it takes a long time to develop these skills. And so that's why maybe salespeople feel like they've got to be on the offensive, right? And to try to lead the conversation, steer it, funnel it. If then alternative choice, Ben Franklin closes, blah, 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 narrow you down, get you right. So, it messes them. They probably shoot themselves in the foot, right? So how do they adapt or adopt this mindset sooner rather than later and still survive?
So you said quite a bit there, and it's a good question. First thing I'll share is every industry is different. You know this, and I know this. A lot of industries, though, when we ask this question, we get a very similar answer. So this is where I'm going to start. If I ask a typical sales professional, when they visit 10 brand new prospects, how many of those brand new prospects have truly decided to make a change before they ever show up to that first meeting? And we asked that for the last 5-6 years constantly. So again, 10 prospects, how many have decided to make a change before you ever show up that first meeting? The answer we typically get back is anywhere between 1, 2, and 3. Now, there's some industries that might say 4 or 5, but without a doubt, 85% of the companies that we ask, it's 1, 2, or 3 prospects out of 10 that have decided to truly make change before anybody shows up. All right. So if you're in that sales mode, which I get, I grew up in sales, which is, ask the questions, find the prospect's pain, provide the solution, ask more questions, go in there and help that prospect make that decision that you're the best solution for their pain. All right. That will work out of the 1, 2, or 3 you've already decided to make change. It will. So you don't have to change anything there, maybe except for get sharper at what you're currently doing. But if you really want to get exponential growth, you got to start thinking about what about the other 7 or 8 prospects who haven't even thought about change yet. And then now you're in front of them. And out of those 7 or 8 prospects, Wes, how many of them might actually benefit from change? It could be another 2, it could be another 4. But you can't have that sales conversation with those other 2 or 4, because those other 2 or 4, they also need to not only understand your solution, but they have to do the hard part of debating the uncertainties of, do I make a change or not make a change? Because they haven't worked themselves through that yet. They're just hearing about your product, answering some questions. And if we think back, here's a human component that we all do. It's human nature to overestimate what we currently have and do and underestimate what we could gain by doing something different. And so for most of you listeners, those 2 or 3 have decided on change, got it, no problem. Those other 7 or 8 who haven't, and then maybe the 2 or 4 within those 7 or 8 who should make change, would benefit from change, they're the ones that need the help to dissect, reevaluate, and debate change. The key thing is objectively. So what we do is, in these deal dissections I mentioned earlier, we help people and our clients, we help them one step at a time, just like in your example with jiu-jitsu. You have to spar. When you spar, my gut is you gain more confidence. So to your point, you spar enough, you gain enough confidence to go into the ring with someone of your equal caliber, and you feel comfortable. You continue to spar, at some point, right, you'll start to feel comfortable going to that next level above you. It's the same in sales, where the more you can spar conversationally, pre-appointment, pre-conversation, so you can get your cadence and get your rhythm, the more successful and confident you're going to be truly in that moment, detaching from whatever that prospect's saying, because you're going to learn real fast. When you attach, you feel like hesitancy, you feel anxiousness, you feel frustration. So like if you're in the middle of a conversation with a prospect and they say something you didn't want to hear, naturally for all of us is to feel frustration, anxious, and maybe a little bit of disappointment, because we got attached to the outcome. They just said this, that means we probably won't get a second meeting, or it's going to be very difficult to try to sell them on our services. So we feel the hesitancy and the disappointment. Detaching means when you hear something bad in the meeting and you didn't want to hear it, and you found yourself labeling the outcome, you just remind yourself, hold on, it doesn't mean anything yet. And the power of that mentally is reminding ourselves the yet is impermanent. All right. It's not permanent. The yet is impermanent. So by saying it doesn't mean anything yet, it hopefully calms us down in the moment and allows us to turn into whatever the prospect said. Like you were doing earlier in your example, you're feeling the person out and you're letting them come at you a bit so you can figure out cadence, rhythms, and maybe some strengths. When you remind yourself it doesn't mean anything yet in the middle of a sales conversation, you're giving yourself that chance to calm down and remind yourself, wait a minute, let me turn into that. It may not be true. How do I know their assumption is right? Let me find out more. So that's, I don't know if I answered the question. I know it was a long-winded one, Wes, but I wanted to give a little bit of a background on it with those 7 or 8 out of 10 who haven't decided on change. Yeah. That's where these techniques I'm talking about become really powerful, because it's not just about your prospect assessing your solution. It's about maybe them debating change more objectively about your solution.
Yeah. So when you talk about, your sparring in sales, are you doing this with the prospect, or are you doing this like internally with your own team, like, your SWOT analysis, your pink and blue sheets, things like that? Or is it just give and take with the prospect, trying to uncover before you commit resources, fly out to see them, bring in systems engineers, fly out the VP and do the big dog and pony show?
So you do some of your practice and your sparring with your teammates first, before you ever go out in the appointment. There's different platforms out there. I know this is one of your expertises, where there's different platforms you can use now to even gather some sparring capability, where they have a little bit of AI attached to them. We use Refract. There's Showpad. There's Chorus. There's some other platforms out there that you can do recording stuff, and you can have your peers or your coach record you, and you can send it to them, and they can give you that feedback. Obviously, there's live sparring too that you do beforehand. But then when you're out in the appointment, the best thing to do is to make sure your mental game is straight first, which is how and if you can help, is that prospect even ready? Because that will free you up to ask those very meaningful questions. And then on top of that, stay detached. Don't worry about the answer. Whatever the answer is, it doesn't mean anything yet. Give yourself a chance and give your prospect a chance so you can turn into it. So those are some things that I think your listeners can kind of maybe start to do right away, where they can deploy a few of these things, at least mentally, to see how they show up in their conversations.
Yeah, it's interesting. You keep saying turn into it, right? It's taken me the longest time, because like naturally when you're assaulted by a better opponent, you turn away. Like you just cover it. It's called turtling, right? You turtle up and you cover your face, and they're like, no, you got to turn into them, get your arms framed, start getting some space. But it is so counterintuitive, right? You just want to curl up in the fetal position. Mm-hmm. And you're going to die that way. It may take longer for you to die, but you're going to die. So I like that analogy, because it is, you got to turn and face them. And I've always said that, like in my training with my clients, like ultimately I just want them to have the presence and the frame of mind to be present, right? To just be in the moment. Don't worry about whatever. I'll give people some scripts and some little tips and tricks to maybe in the beginning, so they're a little more comfortable, like you're stepping on the mat. Hey, try this first, to get it initiated. So at least they have something to start. I'm like, I'm not here to make you a robot of me. It's all sales psychology. I just want them to stay in the game, and how long would you say that takes? I mean, because you talk about, adults taking longer to develop new routines, new habits, new actions. Is it the 21-day thing? Is this a 90-day thing? Is it lifetime?
Good question. Lifetime. It's lifetime. I've been doing this now for 15 years, close to maybe 13 years, 15 years. And there's just certain moments, right? Just like an athlete, an athlete rises to the occasion and is able to perform under pressure. And there's certain occasions for an athlete that are more pressure than others. And so do you perform in the clutch, or do you choke? And so it's the same in sales. It takes a lifetime, because there are certain pressure situations that we all feel where, Wes, you might get a speaking engagement at a really, really big event, or you might be ready, or you might be in consideration to get that speaking engagement at a really big event. And you might get excited internally about it, and it might mean something to you because it's a great accomplishment. You still have to learn in that moment to detach, though, from whatever the outcome is, so that you can perform at your highest level and you're not tied up in that whole, I hope this goes well type of mentality. Those events range for all of us. So we always say it's one of those things you have to learn to go through what we call a sales detox, which is every day before you make your phone calls, every day before you go on an appointment, do yourself and your prospect or your client a favor. Go through your mental detox on sales. It's not about how do you get them to see your value, because there's 5.7 million other sales professionals out there potentially doing that every single day, depending on the statistics that you read. It's not about, hanging on, hoping that the meeting goes well and you get a second meeting or a third meeting or an invite to present, because all that stuff is the same thing everybody else is doing, and it drives the same listening, the same questions, and the same conversation. You have to move the mindset and shift it so that you're listening differently, you're asking different questions, and you're engaging that prospect in a conversation that they can't identify sales patterns. Once they can't identify sales patterns, they become much more open to truly debating some change. Or I'll add this one last thing. Salespeople, right? We get honest answers, or do we get vulnerable answers? There's a big difference. An honest answer, we can still control the narrative. So if a prospect says to us, hey, we do need to improve this area, that's an honest answer. But the prospect can still keep it at a distance because that's all they shared. Vulnerable might be, Wes, where the prospect says, we need to improve this area, and here's why. When the prospect feels like you might be trying to pursue your own agenda, they usually limit their answers to honesty. When the prospect feels like you're truly being neutral and objective, that's when you'll get some more honesty and vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard the analogy years ago. Well, you probably remember Larry Brown, right? Basketball coach. And I forget where he coached in college, but he was with the Pacers, right? When he the Indiana Pacers?
I think
coach?
So.
But he told the story, like he'd tell his guys, he's like, I only want like 3 seconds of 100% effort. And they're like, what? And he's talking about like on defense, because there's a 24-second shot clock and it's all man-to-man. And he's like, if your guy doesn't have the ball, you can back up a little bit, give him a little space, relax a little, but your head's in the game, but you can chill a little bit. But as soon as your guy gets the ball, just give me 3 seconds of just going crazy, right? Just smother the guy and make him pass the ball. And if everybody does that, we're going to be okay. And, and I tell my clients, it's like 3 to 7 seconds of just getting some guts and just asking like one more uncomfortable question. Mm-hmm. Ask one more hard question and just dig in because it usually takes, it's like doctors, everybody, police, whatever. It takes like 3 or 4 whys, right? To get to the real reason. Like in sales, it's always, oh yeah, can you help me grow my sales? I'm like, why do you want to grow your sales? Doesn't everybody want to grow their sales? No, not really. And even if they do, why do you want to grow your sales? Because the why matters. So hitting them with things they don't expect. That's what I always tell my folks is like, ask questions. Our job is to ask questions that the prospect can't answer. Right? Because if they have all the answers, like, I don't know, like my thigh hurts, right? But I know why, because I got kicked in my leg 2 days ago. But let's say it's been hurting for weeks, and I'm Googling, and I'm talking to witch doctors, and I ask all my Facebook friends, like, it's still hurting. Well, when I can't find the answer, I'm finally going to pay the copay and I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to go to the experts, right? And so, right? I mean, would you say, is that our job to I don't want to say confuse the prospect, but if they can answer all their questions, they don't really need us, right?
Yeah, very true. Our job is to ask meaningful questions. You know, we always talk about ask a lazy question, you're going to get a lazy answer.
Yeah.
You know, but it's the mindset, Wes, behind it, right? Because, you know, if I'm in the middle of a meeting with a prospect and I want, to your point, Wes, I want to ask one of those good why questions. Hey, so why do you want to fix this? The first thing I got to overcome, though, is what's between my ears. I got that sales mindset that might be saying, hey, you know what? Don't ask anything stupid. Don't upset them, you know, because then you might not get a second meeting or they may not like you. So play it safe. I got the advisor mindset like you, Wes, where it's like, wait a minute. Why do you want to improve sales? Why is this important to you? The first thing the sales professional has to do is learn how to listen to the advisor mindset, because that's what's going to allow them to ask that type of question. But if they don't have a process for eliminating that sales mindset, they're never going to be able to ask that question. And then what happens is they typically leave the meeting, right? And I know I've done this too, when you whack yourself in the forehead and you say, okay, damn it, why didn't I ask that? What was I thinking? I needed to ask that. That was an example where my sales mindset took over and I played it cautious versus my advisor mindset, which is, wait a minute, I'm doing them a disservice if I don't ask this question.
All right, man. So what question should I ask before we end this? All right. I don't want to hang up here and go, oh, I should have asked that. So here's your chance, man. What's the one thing? What's the one thing our listeners should do as soon as they end this episode? What action should they take, you know, or what final words of wisdom do you have for us?
I would, even though we've talked about it, to emphasize it, because I mean, I've been through lots of sales training prior to me becoming a coach. I know you have, and I know a lot of the techniques out there, and, you know, there's always a place for many of them and all that. But I think the number one thing I would advise your listeners on is start really focusing on the mindset. You know, it's like a date, right? If you're going to go on a date and you get to the date and the other person is fairly attractive and you figure that out pretty quick, and they got a great personality and you find yourself attracted to them, you know, the last thing on the date you want to do, right, is slide your resume across the table and say, hey, here's who I am, here's my jobs, here's what my income is, and here's some references of other people I've dated in the past if you want to call them. Nobody does that on a date, right? Nobody goes into that kind of proving mode on a date. And, you know, if you're on that date too, and it's only about half an hour into the date and you turn to the other person and say, hey, my parents are in town tomorrow, you know, do you want to meet them? That other person's going to go run for the hills, just like we would if it was in the flip side. It's the same in sales. When you walk in, the mindset should be, number one, my goal here is to determine how and if I can help this prospect, and are they even ready? And then the second goal should be, but I also need to make sure I detach right now from any of my needs, any outcomes or anything, so I can truly be in the moment with them. That'd be the biggest takeaway. I know it's a little bit more repetitive based on what we've already talked about, but it is something all of your audience can go do tomorrow or today right away.
Yeah. Amen. Selling is serving, huh?
Yes, very much.
All right. Well, I appreciate you juggling your schedule so I can go on vacation next week and coming on a little early and let me blindside you, moving it out before you can do all your research. But I do appreciate it, man. This has been fantastic.
So you have a lot of experience with this, so I appreciate that. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's good it's at the end because I can just delete this if I don't like it.
It's actually a two-part question.
Uh-oh.
First one is, what interviews do you remember the most? You've done how many of these? How many episodes are you in now? 500?
This one is going to be around number 456.
456. Okay. So,
well, plus the CRM Sushi podcast, it's more of a technical. So yeah, pushing 500.
Yeah, I saw that. So what typically makes a great interview that you've noticed?
Oh man. Kind of like what you're talking about. It's just that detachment. It's just conversational. And I don't do much prep at all on these, right? I'll look somebody, I'll find your LinkedIn, your social media, I'll do some scanning. And I want it literally to be like, we're at the bar, shooting the breeze. Hey man, what do you do? Oh, wow. How long have you done that? Right. And kind of digging in. So people that show up, and I guess you don't really know until you get into it, right? Because I've had some people that I've had some big names that, like I'm excited, to interview, and they're kind of just rote, kind of robotic. Fortunately, though, it really hasn't been that many of those. I've had some that just were kind of boring. They were just boring. And usually I can pull it out of them. Usually I can salvage. But I have deleted a couple of episodes. Like, dude, I'm not publishing that. And I wouldn't tell them much. Or fortunately, one of those that we did have some technical issues, so I blamed it on that. But just people being honest. For a while, I tried a scripted interview, same questions. Man, that lasted maybe 3 or 4 episodes.
What'd you find there? What happened there?
It was fine, but I asked too many questions and I allowed it to go too long. And I'm just not that prescriptive, man. I'm your typical salesperson, entrepreneur. I go where the lead takes me, right? But it does work. I mean, John Lee Dumas did it for a long time, for thousands of interviews. So it clearly works. It just didn't work for me. And maybe I'll go back to that in the future, or do a little spin-off, maybe a shorter. I like conversational. I think my audience likes conversational. But like I said, clearly there's an appetite for scripted, structured. Boom, I'm going to get in, I'm going to get a 20-minute interview, I'm going to get some nuggets out of this guy and go about my day. So, but just having these authentic kind of conversations, I found are the best. Okay.
Next question, part 2, feedback from you. I've just started on this journey, Wes, where, I'm realizing podcasting is powerful, content is powerful, and I'm open to your feedback on how you think today went and where could it have gotten better.
Oh, I think it's fine. You got good advice. So I really wouldn't change a thing. Hell, be yourself, right? And if you're so are you talking from a hosting standpoint or a guest or both or what?
Both.
Obviously from the hosting standpoint, I can't tell, but I mean, you know your stuff. So I would say just keep it conversational, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of approach it like I do with jiu-jitsu, right? Just take what they give you. Unless if you're more structured, hey, I've done interviews where it's so funny. So I've been on a lot of interviews where we're going to open and close and this and that and not 5 of these. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And we'll get into it. Hey, did you think about that? No, I didn't. Let's go. I mean, because that's me, right? I'm going to do it from the seat of my pants. So you could do it either way, right? So just be yourself, but people that are in sales, want to hear from experts, and I like your approach. I mean, when you see this go live, I'd take notes, usually just one sentence, bullets, boom, boom, boom. But, I've got just a quick skim, probably 40 bullets here, so that's one a minute. So that's good.
Okay, cool. Appreciate the thoughts and the feedback on all that. I do.
Yeah, and we forgot to mention. Well, I did mention so I am linking to both your website and your podcast, but your website, we got to give that out, right? It's Lappin, Lappin, Lappin 180, right? The number 180.
Correct.
Lappin180.com, and I'm linking to. Do you have a URL for your podcast, or should it just link to it from your website?
I'll email you that. I think we do.
Yeah. So anyone listening, it's Breaking Sales Podcast, just like Breaking Bad. So, if you're on your phone, if you want to go find that, or just go to Lappin180.com, and then it's on iTunes. I see it's on Spotify, so they can easily get to it there from your website, right?
Correct.
Cool. All right. The second conclusion, Dan Lappin, all the way from Indiana, man. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been great.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks for having me.
Amen. There is a lot of psychology that goes into selling because it's just human relationships, and humans, we are crazy people. And as salespeople, sales professionals, we have to adjust how we sell to match how the prospect wants to buy. So you better be a student of human nature. I love how he has the analogies of professional sports. Look, storytelling sells, analogies sell. It's how you connect. Focus on the activity. I've always said manage activity and pay on results. That's how you do it as a sales manager. But in sales, like he's saying, don't worry about the outcome. Just do the proper routine. That's why golfers, whether it's a 3-foot putt or a 33-foot putt, they follow the same routine. That routine gets their mind out of the activity and lets the body take over. It gives them better results. What are your routines? What are you doing to get better performance? I love that you talked about sleep and eat right and be sharp, exercise, meditate. That's what I've been talking about, lately, the saleswhisper.com/fitness. I mean, I've done it forever, so why not talk about it? Why not sell it? Why not recommend it and help you get some of the same results? It's one of my little secrets, if you will. I stay sharp, stay in shape. But, these routines, the mindset, where do you focus? Where's the emphasis? It's all so important. So I hope you got a lot out of that. I love how he's talking about role playing. It's what I do a lot in the 30-day sales growth group. It's what I do a lot if you need help one-on-one or bring me in for your team. We're going to practice, drill, and rehearse. Okay, I'm going to push your people. I'm going to send them out to go do what we just practiced, what we drilled, then have them come back. Because look, anybody selling you on a 1 or 2 day boot camp, whatever, some methodology, that is junk. It might move the needle a little bit for a short amount of time, but your people will soon fall back into their old habits. You've got to practice something, go out and you got to learn it, teach it, go do it, and see where the shortcomings are, because there will be. Like they say, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy, but you still plan. Mike Tyson says everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You got to go out and do it in the real world and come back and adapt it and tweak it. But the fundamentals still work. I can get you 70, 80, even 90% of the way there in the classroom, but you've got to go out and engage to get that final 10 or 20 or 30%. If you're committed, hey, we can help you grow. It's what I do. But I hope you got a lot out of this interview. If you want to continue the conversation, head on over to theimplementors.com. If you want to really dive in, it's 30daysalesgrowth.com. 41 professional videos done in the studio, live, recorded calls with me every Monday, and a whole lot more. Okay? I will help you grow your sales. Thanks for listening. Please leave a 5-star review. I'll go sell something.